Hey guys, we're gonna do another little Q&A today because I need to test my internet connection. I had to put in a ticket after the last one because it wasn't quite working well. As you can see, I've got my Santa beard in full form. Triple bleached it yesterday. That's something I like to do during the Christmas holidays is run around and visit churches, schools, nursing homes, that kind of thing. So I'm gonna put it on mute. Put something in the comment section about leaving questions there, and be right back. Hey Darnell, thanks for asking. It's an awesome Friday, man. Uh, Looking forward to enjoying some weekend time. Got a daughter turning 13 tomorrow, so we get to go run around, do whatever she wants to do tomorrow. But doing good. How are you doing? I'm curious if you're at work. No judgment. Just wondering if you're at work checking in or yeah, right. 13. I have six daughters, bro. So I've already. It's not my first rodeo. What's going on? done. Oh, okay. So my eldest daughter's got this one out, getting her hair done now. So I'm getting all the pictures streamed in. That one is up. All right. You're at work. Cool. You an X-ray? What's your modality? Oh yeah, we talked about that yesterday. The big Medicare cut. I actually have. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I have an article about that. I wrote to express my concerns. I wonder. Right there, Medicare will cut 11% from diagnostic imaging. So you're work, but you're not in extra school yet. That's cool. They're always trying to cut money out of our department. It's always going to happen. The politicians are always going to try to cut money out of healthcare because so much is spent there. And the insurance companies are always going to try to squeeze us. And so they pay their lobbyists to go to Washington and put pressure on the politicians who do what they say, because the lobbyists and insurance companies are, well, I won't say what they're probably doing with the politicians, but they get what they want. So we fight back. Like right now, the AHRA, which is the Association for Radiology Management, they have an initiative to write to Washington and state why we think that's a bad idea and what that's going to do to patient care. And we try to push back as best we can, but I think we're all seeing with the recent events that sometimes you can't do anything about politics. It unfolds based on what the puppeteers are doing. So I'm not worried about it yet because it hasn't happened. That's one thing you learn is really in life, when you hear something might happen, it's smart to try and take precautions and plan for it, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen. Really, how would this affect us if the Medicare cuts happen? It would mean we might not get equipment replaced as fast as we would like. We might need to pay closer attention to our service plans to make sure our older equipment is being serviced properly to keep it running longer, which is something we should always be doing anyway. And we should always be watching our staffing models to make sure they're efficient. Because like I mentioned in this article, the big boss will pull in the radiology boss and say, I assume you've seen the cuts proposed to Medicare. How do you intend to reduce your expenses to counterbalance the reduction in revenues? And so we look at limiting training of staff. We look at removing luxury items, the unnecessaries, like if you're getting water bottles delivered or if you're getting coffee and stuff delivered, anything that's not a necessity. And if things, it's just like at your house. If something happens, you lose your job or something happens and you got to cut back, you start cutting out the fringe benefits. But that doesn't mean it has to be forever. It just means while times are tight. In college, you're sometimes in life, you resort to eating ramen noodles because it's cheap. But when times are good, you go back to eating healthy. And so they look at reducing raises. They could freeze annual raises. I've seen that before. And then there's always the reduced staffing where they spread you out thinner or if somebody quits, they don't replace them right away. So that, those are what could happen if Medicare, the non-essential stuff. Well, back to the conversation, back to when I was talking about coffee and water. That's the non-essential stuff. Staffing is essential, and that's where I think a radiology director or manager kind of shows their mettle, is when they take a stand and say it's poor patient care to only have one tech on at night, for example, to have one tech covering X-ray and CT all by themselves. And of course, depending on how busy the hospital is, but I would rather have one CT tech and one X-ray tech on at night to help each other out. And if it's slow, it's slow. But you learn the hard way that you get burned if you only put one person on. Eventually, not only do you pay somebody to come in on call and pay them extra to be on call, but if something goes wrong with the patient because you didn't have enough people there, that's on the director for not staffing it properly. So that's my take. Anytime we get these Medicare threats to reduce income, and it happens all the time, really. So, and if it's not a threatened cut from Medicare or CMS or the government or whatever, it's the new CEO saying we need to streamline our processes, and they'll hire consultants to come in and evaluate everything and say, you have too many supervisors, you have too many vice presidents, you have too many whatever, and they want you to cut that down. So that's just business. You've got to do certain things on a regular basis to kind of hedge your bet, if you know what I mean. You have to build a redundancy so that if the first thing fails, you can go to the second thing. So for example, in staffing, your first line of staffing is your full-time people, and then second line is part-time people, and then your third line is your PRN staff. Your PRN staff are there to fill in the gaps in case somebody quits or gets sick or goes out with COVID or whatever. You can flex your part-time people up in hours to the point that the employee will let you, and then you fill in the rest of the gaps with your PRN people. The biggest mistake you can make in management is not have enough PRN to fill in the gaps, and sometimes that depends on where you live, because say you live in a small town and there's not anybody around to do PRN, you're kind of beholden. Like, you guys probably saw the article about the guy. He was it Kansas? I think he was in Kansas. It's a news story about a tech that slept in an RV in the parking lot for a week because he was the only tech that wasn't out on COVID. And so he had to hang around and basically be on call for the whole week. That is a small town. Actually, one of his coworkers chimed in on our Facebook group. You can see it there if you go to our Facebook group. The Radiology Technologist group is what it's titled. There's a post in there about that Kansas news article, and one of the peers of that tech said, there's only 3 of us to begin with, and 2 of us were out with COVID. So Eric was his name. Eric, by default, was it. He had to stay. But she also shared that he does that every week or every weekend. He takes call one weekend a month. There's that article, Darnell. He takes call one weekend a month and sleeps in his RV in the parking lot. So really, it was another one of those stories that the news blew out of proportion. We know that we take call and stay in sleep rooms or stay out in our RVs or do whatever we have to do to make it convenient. But oh, good. Yeah, join up. I just asked that anybody that joins the Facebook group answers the questions, because the questions are just, you're going to follow HIPAA. Don't post images with people's names on it. and what modality are you in, or are you just checking it out for a potential career? Just to give us a little bit of information. People that don't answer anything, I don't think it's wise to let them in, because if they're not invested enough to at least tell you a few things, how helpful are they going to be in the group? So my internet provider called and said we'd like to propose a temporary increase on your bandwidth to see if that helps with your connectivity issues, because I had connectivity issues the last time we did this. It kept cutting out. It actually cut off my first live stream at the 28-minute mark, and then I was able to get in a 3-hour one after that, but it kept saying your connection is limited, reconnecting the whole time. So they called today and said, why don't you try another one? We'll up your limit and see if you still have those problems. So that's why I did kind of the impromptu today. I'm going to definitely plan these out in the future so people know about it and have time to join in. But the purpose of these is just going to be so that if anybody has any questions, they can post them in the comment section, and I'll do my best to answer it. It's obviously just going to be my opinion. Other people have other opinions, and I've been in the field for about 20 years. I started in X-ray and learned CT. I'm certified in both. Then I went to ultrasound school, and then I learned MRI. And I haven't talked about it too much, but I actually was in the RPA program at Weber State for a while. They had a 2-year RPA program, Radiologic Practitioner Assistant, and that was the only program of its type. It was actually the first program for RAs. It was a co-op between Weber State and the military. The military approached, and I have an article about that on my website, but the military approached Weber State and said, we really need some kind of hybrid out here in the field that can do X-rays, but also do some mild procedures in case we don't have doctors. And so they kind of designed the first radiologic physician assistant. And that program lasted for like 17 years at Weber State, but they had difficulty with it, and they had difficulty getting, no problem, Darnell, you're welcome. They had difficulty getting the AACR to buy into it, because anytime you introduce a mid-level provider in the world of radiology, the radiologists get all worried that they're going to be replaced. And I wouldn't say it's completely unfounded, because anesthesiologists got all up in arms about nurse anesthetists in the exact same way, but they couldn't stop it. And so nurse anesthetist became a thing, but now they're embraced because the nurse anesthetist has to work for the anesthesiologist, which means the anesthesiologist makes money off of the nurse anesthetist. So in other words, if there's surgeries all day long and the anesthesiologist wants the day off, he can call his nurse anesthetist and say, go cover all day, I'm going to go golfing. Still makes money. So, at some point you got to think business-wise. It might be nice to make $800,000 a year or whatever as a radiologist, but give 150 to a PA or an RPA who can do the stuff you don't want to do, like the EEs and the small bowel follow-throughs and lumbar punctures. See, radiologists make their money, the most money, by staying in their chair and reading. If they have to get up and go do a procedure, then it takes them more time, and they don't make as much money per minute, if you want to look at it that way. Let's say a PICC line, let's say, I don't know what those are paying now, but I remember I broke it down to a radiologist that was his group was at the hospital I was working at the time, and he shared something with me. I think it was PICC lines. I think he gets basically $100 per PICC line, which you think, well, that's not very much. But he had it down with the technologist to the point where the tech had everything. The entry point with ultrasound had it marked with the mark, prepped, ready to go. And all the rad had to do was walk in, introduce themselves, put the needle in, put the PICC line in, test it up on the screen to make sure it was patent, and then leave. And I think it was like less than 5 minutes. So $100 in 5 minutes is a pretty good deal. So because I was making the point that I think the tech should do the PICC lines. And he was making the point that my group makes $100,000 a year with us doing them, and it's a super simple thing for us to do. We just walk in, poke them, walk back out. And I said, yeah, because my tech is setting 95% of the thing up for you. Why not let them do the other 5%? But I went off on a tangent there. I'm not even sure where I was going with that. So I was talking about RPA. So the RPA program finally folded about 3 years ago. And maybe what I'll do is add these links as I'm talking about them, because I think a lot of people don't realize all this information is on this site, and it's very helpful to use the search feature. So here is the article about the RPA. The cool thing about the RPA program was that we could do some wet reading. We were trained. I was actually doing some wet reading as well as lumbar punctures and esophagograms and things like that. But of course, my radiologist would overread it. The chart, it was really cool. But Weaver State had a really hard time getting the ACR on board, mostly because of that wet reading. And who else? The ASRT would not get on board. And so there's different there, but as I document in my article, RT sent somebody over to Weaver State to kind of check out the RPA program and maybe talk about getting together and making it a bigger program. But I heard that the person who ran it at the time, who's no longer there at Weaver State, was kind of being hard-nosed about it. And so the ASRT went off and started their own with the ARRT. So the ARRT started the RA program, Radiologic Assistant. And that was based loosely on the RPA. It's a mid-level provider type thing, only they recognized that this wet read thing was a no-go. That's out of scope according to what they felt. So now you have like 20 RA programs around the country through the ARRT or accredited, and there's a licensure you can take. And the RPA program just finally folded one day a couple of years ago. There are still RPAs out there practicing. I had to guess, I don't know, maybe 2,000 of them. I don't know. They had to form their own board exam organization, the CBRPA, to administer their own board exams and get certified. And the ASRT was nice enough, and the ART were nice enough to allow them a bridge, a crossover. They could come. They went over and could take the RA program certificate. Or, I'm sorry, they went over and took the RA licensure exam. So you could get licensed as an RA if you were an RPA without going back to school. So you'll see them out there in the wild, so to speak. There's RPAs that are also RAs. And they're doing all the, fluoroscopic procedures so that, like I was saying in the beginning, the doctors make more money staying in their chairs reading studies than they do getting up and doing procedures. So the RAs are good mid-level providers to help out in that realm. And I was halfway through that RPA program. I think I was actually in the third semester out of 5. And the radiology group that was sponsoring me, because they were overwhelmed with work, the hospital where we were at, the old Mesa General in Mesa, Arizona, closed. And so those docs were kind of without a home, and they ended up working out of county down there in Phoenix. But it killed my clinical site. You have to provide your own clinical site in the RPA program. And I was doing my clinical site at Mesa General. When it closed, that was that. And so I talked to them a few years later about trying to go back and finishing it. And I didn't get anywhere. I didn't really get a no, but I didn't really get solid communication either. And then it closed permanently. So what do we got? Got a few people. Let's see. Tarek, I have an interview in Feb. How do you think I should prepare? Great question. Got a lot of info on that. And then Taligo, hello from Cyprus. You're a ways away. Hello from Idaho. So let's start with these one at a time. Let me do Tarek. I have an interview in February. I'm assuming you mean an interview for RadTech school, or do you mean an interview for a job? Two separate things. If it's RadTech school, yeah, I have lots of tips posted on my blog. If I do a search in the search bar for the word interview, let's see what I get. RadTech interview, RadTech stimulus. I have interview questions in one of my articles. I've been writing these articles for a couple of years now, so I'm starting to lose track of where everything is. There's, I think we're going on 150 articles on there. Darn it. So here's one. This is a guy I called Jackrabbit Joe, and it's all the things he did to make sure he got a job right outside of graduating X-ray school. Then here's a guide to getting into X-ray school, which includes things about the interview. And I bet that second one, best guide on how to get accepted, if I remember right, that has how to handle the interview. So it talks about figuring out who you might know in the program and leveraging that, entrance exams like the Wonderlic, building up your resume to give to the school, classes you should take before applying to the school, shadowing somebody already in the field so that you can talk about that in your interview, volunteer if you can at a hospital to kind of learn how the hospital works. You can talk about that in your interview. And then I lay out a plan, part number 8. Show you're serious about X-ray school with a plan. So check those two out, and then hit me back if you got any more questions. And then you should check out our Facebook group too, because that question gets asked all the time, and dozens and dozens of people give their answers to that. So you can hear from more than just me. It's the radiologic. Let's see. It's the radiology. What did I call that thing? Hang on. The Radiologic Technologist group is what we call the Facebook group. And you have to answer a couple questions to get accepted. So don't just skip through them or you won't get in. But lots of good information there as well. Any ideas how can we, the radiology technologists, radiotherapists, how we can get involved in research? I feel like our knowledge is limiting our role into just taking images. Yeah, go for a higher degree. I'm working on my doctorate now, and I'm doing a ton of research. The other thing you can do is watch for it within your work. Your hospital worked at was doing research on something. I saw it in one of our company newsletters, and I just emailed that person and I said, hey, I've done some research in the past, and I'd like to help out if I can, whether it's data crunching or interviewing or whatever. And I just straight out emailed them and said, can I participate in helping with your research study? The third thing you can do is start coming up with process improvement projects for your own department and showing them to your boss and saying, hey, I think I found a way to decrease turnaround times for x-rays by, I don't know, bringing a patient through this way and through these hallways instead of around that way, and whatever your plan is. But your boss will always appreciate project improvement or workflow improvement type projects. I promise. In fact, we usually pay people to do that from outside the company. We can involve research. I feel like our knowledge is limited. Our role just taking images and apply. Yeah. So, if you really like research, consider getting, the next higher degree. Do you have a bachelor's? Do you have a master's? Do you want to go on to the doctorate level? That's what I would recommend, is either get involved locally with a project or find out if they have a project locally that you can be involved in, or get your degree. I studied 4 years, by the way, in a university to get the radio diagnostics and radiotherapy degree. Is it different in the USA? Yeah, unfortunately, man, that's the problem. And maybe on a global scale, somehow we got to get together on a global scale and iron that out, because I think there's other countries that are doing a lot more education on some techs than we're doing over here. But we're doing more than some other countries as well. So I think it's a shame that you can't go from country to country and help out. Like, if there's a big disaster in another country and I want to go help out, if I've been to school and I'm licensed, there should be some type of agreement between societies or countries or whatever to honor and accept certain things. But no, you can't come here from anywhere else that I know of. America is governed by the ARRT, and to get a license from the ARRT, their rules say that you have to go to one of the specified. So it doesn't say the schools exactly. It says what accrediting bodies they recognize. They call them accrediting mechanisms, but JCERT for one is one organization, or they call it a mechanism that makes sure that X-ray schools are doing the right things. And the ARRT backs JCERT, but they also back several other accrediting mechanisms. So the best thing you can do, man, is to call the ART and say, I went to school here in this place and I have this license, and can I practice in America, or what would I have to do, and see what they tell you. And they may tell you got to start all over, but there's also some bridge programs for certain things. Bridge programs just mean it's a shortened bridge to get you from one place to another. Like we have a limited licensed technologist here in America that can't do everything that a standard radiographer can do, but they can do like extremities, and they can take a bridge program at some schools to become a full-blown radiographer. So it's tough to say till it goes, because it depends on what country you're from, and it depends on what your training was. I mean, I know some physicians from India or other countries that come here and can't practice medicine because they don't have that kind of a license here, and they end up doing ultrasounds because they were a doctor over there doing ultrasounds, and over here, of course, our doctors love them because they're really high qualified sonographers. But I think that's a great project that somebody needs to take on at some point, is how do we make it so that an American who's licensed can go do ultrasounds in Australia or Ireland or Africa or whatever. Because every time I see that posted, pretty much what I see is you can't just jump. There's certain places you can, and trying to find that information is really hard on where you can go. Thanks for the thumbs up, by the way, whoever was nice enough to do that. So if you want, I can find that for you, but the ARRT has a page of what accrediting mechanisms they approve of. And so what people over here in America do is they find a school that they think they want to go to, and then they have to go look up on this page and see if the accrediting body, well, that's JCERT, if the accrediting body is approved by the ARRT or not. Where is it? Give me a second. I just had it up yesterday, and I shared it on the live stream yesterday. It's the ARRT's accredited mechanism. It's the Google search term. There it is. So this page, copy. Hey, Francisco. That page right there, that ART link, that shows you that all the things that they like. There's a national faith-related accrediting agencies, national accrediting agencies. international associations for accreditation, like the Accreditation Canada, I guess is one from Canada. So check out that list, and if that's the body that accredited the school where you went, then you can sit for the ART exam based on the experience you already have. But if you're ever in doubt, you got to call the ART and just ask them, and that's your source. So let's move on here. Any examples of masters and PhDs? I'm not sure what you mean, Tilagos, but there are masters in radiology. It's MSRS, Master of Science in Radiologic Science, and there are no PhDs in our field right now, but there are schools looking into it. Thanks for the thumbs up, guys. There's no, they're looking at it. Like Pima Medical Institute has a bachelor's. I'm on the board for the online bachelor's through Pima, but I think they just started a master's program, the MSRS. There's probably, I don't know, probably 10 schools offering the MSRS now, and I have one of those. I got it from Weber State. I can tell you about that if you'd like. But there's nobody offering a doctorate in what we do, but there are some schools that are talking about it. I used my MSRS from Weber State to get accepted into a doctorate program at Nebraska Methodist College, and it's a doctorate in education. So it's an EDD in education and healthcare leadership. So it's still tied to healthcare, but it's also in education, because I have always wanted to teach in an official capacity. I've always wanted to teach inside of a radiology program or at a college or something like that. And I'm about halfway through that program. So if you have any questions about the doctorate program, I'm happy to answer those too. It's pretty cool. It's fun. If you don't mind, homework and stuff. Let's see. Darnell, my membership is still pending. Oh, well, okay. So you guys know the group, the Radiologic Technologist group. I'll hop in there. There's 4 member requests. Make sure you answer the questions, but I'll put Darnell in there. We've got, it's curious. We've got someone applying to get in, and where you're supposed to answer what modality you're working in. This person put all of them: X-ray, CT, MRI, ultrasound, nuke med, PET, IR, mammo. And that, to me, nobody does all of them. Let's be honest. So did you just pick everything you weren't paying attention? Or are you lying and you're going to try and sell your palm reading service in my group, or what? So she answered all the questions, so I will let her in, but I will keep an eye on her, because nobody is. The question is, what is your main profession? And they picked them all, so we know that's not true. Let's get you in there. And then if you're just looking into it as a career, then for your main profession, just put in looking into it for a career choice. That's fine. There's 2 of those. And so there, everybody's in. So back to the camera. Okay. So where are we at? Thanks for chiming in too. And this was a last minute thing. If you didn't hear the beginning of it, my internet company, I turned in a ticket because it was having a lot of connection issues a couple days ago when we did this. And so they called and said, do another one and let's watch it. So the internet company is watching the upload speed right now to try and figure out if I have an issue here or what. So Darnell's in. Francisco, what was the most difficult class you took in radiology school? Does anybody not say physics to that? Because physics sucks. Physics, and maybe physics comes easy to somebody. It certainly didn't come easy to me. But just like everything else, is you make some friends in there and you form a study group and you study your butt off and you pass it. I've got sample tests on just about everything on my blog under resources at the top tab. If you go to resources, I've got patient care quizzes, I've got physics, I've got positioning, just about every class you can have in X-ray school. I've got sample quizzes for each of them. and they're formatted in a way you can do it on your phone. That's the cool thing. I played around with making a phone app, and it's just a pain in the butt. So go check that stuff out. I probably took 6 months taking these x-ray films and blanking out the positions on them, and then creating a copy with the answers on it so that you could look at a blank x-ray of a hand and ask yourself what all the bones are, and then see the image with the answer so you can study your anatomy. So the entire body is on there under that resource tab at the top. So you've got a lot of quizzes and you've got a lot of anatomy stuff. And I'm working on some cross-sectional CT anatomy, but that's a lot tougher. You guys like the sand beard? I just bleached it out last night, took a couple of times. I play Santa here locally for the kids, and work, as they asked me to play Santa at work, and it was an excuse to not have to shave for a while. But by the time I was on my 3rd year of doing it at work, they finally just gave me the Santa suit instead of renting it every year, and we would do it for breakfast, lunch, and the night shift for the employees. And in between, I'd go run around town and see my friends who had little kids, or run through the shopping mall, or run through the local restaurants and take pictures with the kids and stuff. And it got to be so much fun. Now I can't imagine a season without doing it. So I got the beard out. I got to get the wax that lets me curl up the ends of the mustache, like the Santa does. But it starts to wear on you after a while, because when you look in the mirror and you see all white or gray, whatever you want to call it, it starts making you feel old after a while. So sometime around mid-January, I just shave it all off and start over, because it's fun. It's novelty through Christmas time, running around. I've got a green suit and a red suit. I had an autistic child he would be set off by the color red. It would aggravate him. And the mom bought a green suit and asked if I would wear it. Pictures turned out beautiful. She had the most beautiful young son and daughter. And when it was over, she said, I don't have anything to do with this suit. Would you like to have it? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So it's just a fun, you guys all need a hobby. You all need a hobby, because radiology can be all consuming. You need something that you can step outside your role and relax. Fishing, hunting, kayaking, skiing, what gaming, paint minis, whatever. Find something outside of work so you don't drive yourself insane. My wife is an x-ray tech too, which is cool, because then we can talk about stuff and we both get it for the rest of our lives, right? She's on a shift right now. She'll probably, she came home yesterday. And if you're it's like, would you believe that at 5 minutes till close, they sent me a person in a wheelchair and ordered a femur, knee, tib, fib, ankle, and foot. And I just thought, yeah. So we've all been there. That's when you have to go back to the doc and go, look, doc, you're going to get a knee in your femur, and you're going to get an ankle in your tib fib. Why don't we reduce some of this dosage? And they're usually okay with it. That's something I always try and stress to you guys, is you're the expert. That radiologist cannot take images. He does not know how to work any of our machinery. And so you're the expert that has to tell these nurse practitioners and doctors and PAs, when they order something silly, it's up to you to professionally and politely educate them on what they should be ordering. And sometimes you'll get pushback, and they'll say, do what I say, I'm the doctor. Okay, I'm just letting you know that you ordered a little too much. But comes and goes, right? Let me see what's going on here. So that was the most difficult class, Francisco, was physics by far. Let's see. I see very useful information. Thank you. I don't think there would be many things to separate us Europeans and Americans. No, that's my point, brother. Is we should be, dude, I would love to fly over there and hang out with some of you in a hospital and push a portable around and shoot some x-rays with you. How cool would that be if I could video that? Hi, this is Ron. This week I'm going to London and I'm going to shoot some x-rays at such and such hospital. I think that would be a blast. But it's fragmented all over the world, unfortunately. Let's see. Yep, Darnell's in the group, the Facebook group. Maria, hi there. It says, I have an interview with Pima in April. Your video about Pima inspired me to apply, so hopefully I get in. Awesome. I still recommend them. They're not cheap. Pima is not a cheap program, but they're not the most expensive either. I remember Carrington and a few others were 40, and they were like 60,000 back when my program was 18. So, that's always going to be the case, because there's always going to be people desperate enough that they'll pay anything for something. But be smart about it. You do want to get into school as fast as possible so you can get out making money as fast as possible. But you also don't want to get crazy amounts in debt. When I went through X-ray school, it was 18,000, and when my wife went through about 3 years later, I think she paid 30, and she went through Pima. So I went through Pima. My wife went through Pima. My stepdad went through Pima before I did, and my mom teaches there in the Mesa campus in Arizona. And we didn't get any price breaks for none of that. So make sure you read up on all my interview stuff for your interview, like questions you can ask. I posted that. If you're not in our Facebook group, get over there and sign up, because I listed 9 questions to ask on somebody's post just the other day. Do you cross train? Or wait, was that for? Yeah, no, those were school questions. Can I choose my own clinicals, or are you going to assign them to me? That kind of stuff, because you don't know what you need to ask till somebody tells you what you need to ask. I didn't know all that stuff till I got in there. Like your clinicals, did you know? You probably know that your clinical sites are a job interview, because that's what they are. You're there learning how to do the job, but that employer is watching you the entire time. And if you do a great job and they have a job opening, they'd be stupid not to hire you, because they just spent 2 years training you on their equipment, and they got to train you for free because you paid to be in the program. So clinicals are a job interview first and foremost, but if you can control where you do those at, like I went in it, I made a list. I shared this the other day, but Pima, when I went there, put everybody's name in a hat, and they wrote all the clinical sites up on the board, and then pull a name out of the hat, and that person would go up there and pick whichever site they wanted. So if you want a level 1 trauma with all that cool adrenaline pumping stuff, you got to be ready to pick that level 1 trauma. That's what most people want. So that disappears quickly. So you got to have a backup plan. So I actually chose a level 1 trauma, and I chose a place that I found out. One of the questions you ask in your interview is, what are the clinical sites? Can I take a list of those home so that I can start to plan my routine? Because that'll really impress them that you're thinking that far down the line. But what you're really doing is you're taking that list, and you can call them and say, like I called them and said, do you have a weekend clinical rotation? And most of them would say no, but I found one that did. They would let students come in on Saturday and Sunday, which meant I could work my job during the week. I had school during the mornings, worked at night, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I did my clinical rotations, and it worked out perfect. And nobody chose that because it was a little hole-in-the-wall hospital, and that's all they saw was hole-in-the-wall hospital, level 1 trauma. Which one would I rather have? Well, I want the level 1 trauma. Well, I knew I could do my clinicals on the weekend and keep working, and it worked out for me and my family better. But I ended up getting both. So make sure you check out my blog, the radiologictechnologist.com, and the Facebook group, because we talk a lot about this stuff all the time. So let's see. Francisco, I did not know about your sample quizzes. I will definitely look into them. Yeah, there's, if I hop over there, the Radiologic, I'll post the link. Save you a little bit of time. Anybody else that's on there, if you go to my website and you click on resources/study guides on the top toolbar, which takes you right here. At the top is anatomy study guides. And that is all those x-ray film that I took and turned them into anatomy study guides for you. It took me like 6 months to get all those in there. And then under quizzes, right under that, let's see, I have 4 quizzes under pathology, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 under positioning 1, 2 under positioning 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 under sectional anatomy, 2 under patient care, 2 under physics, and I've got more coming. It takes a lot of time to build these quizzes. I also have the California Fluoroscopy State Board exam on there if anybody's headed out to California, but you should know that as of January, I believe, they said you don't have to have it anymore if you graduated from an ARRT approved program after 2011, which is interesting because forever, California has been the only state that required an additional fluoroscopy license. And we always said, why? Why does your state require it and the rest of the country doesn't? So anyway, they finally decided, yeah, you guys are right. You didn't need it after all. Only people that don't have an ART license from 2011 forward need it. Okay. So the doctors and people like that can take that exam. But there's the quizzes, and they're set up so that you can do it on your phone. So you just, you answer your question, hit submit or whatever, and it tells you if you're right or wrong, and then it goes to the next question. And so there are some ads on it, and that's how I help pay for the hosting and everything. All this stuff is free that I put out, but I put some ads on there. Like I got this really obnoxious, ugly Christmas sweaters ad on the top right corner of my site right now. I'm not really digging it. I don't think anybody else cares about it. I'm thinking I might just have that removed. But I put these ads on there because it helps pay, because the hosting is like, I don't know, 60 a year or something, or 100 a year. And there's other little things, little plugins that are in the WordPress theme that I got to pay for. Like I had to purchase the quiz plugin so I could build these quizzes. And so there's going to be some ads on there just to help me pay for having this thing up there. But everything on it's free for you guys. So let's see. Taligo says, really good beard. I was about to ask if you act like Santa. Yeah, I don't know if I want to give you my Santa Facebook page or not, but yeah, I've been doing it for at least 4 years. I don't think it's 5 years. I think it's 4 years. I've got little golden, round spectacles that I set out on the end of my nose like Santa does. And got the whole thing. It's really fun. It's a lot of fun. Anyway, that's a whole other topic. So where are we at? Let's see. Darnell, when will you start doing giveaways? Oh, no, I've been doing those for years. I had a contest and gave away. Have you guys seen those skeletons that are on Amazon? They're called Mr. Bones, and it ends in a Z, Bones, Bonez. Mr. Bones, he's actually in my kids' room right now, is almost life size. He's like 5 feet tall, I think, and fully posable. He can even stand up. But you want to talk about, for all these poor students that aren't getting clinical hours because of COVID, for $50, you can buy a Mr. Bones and position him. You can set him up and put an arm out on the table, for a lateral elbow or whatever. So I gave one of those away a while back during the height of the pandemic. I've given away markers, CEUs for continuing education credits. I've had a couple contests. So maybe it's time to do another one. Is that what you're saying, Bud? I should have another contest. What would I give away? What do you think would be a good thing to give away? I've done Appleton Lang books for study guides. Trying to think. I've done scrubs. I've done a pair of Hokas. Those are my favorite shoes. In fact, I got them on, but I don't want to take it off to show you. But there's an article on it, like everything else, right? I actually have a YouTube video where I go over. If you want a good pair, you guys should all look into that. If you want a good pair of shoes, because you're going to need it in your clinicals, I've got a video that compares the Hokas with the Ghost. What were they? The Brooks Ghosts, because those were my favorite. Because I thought nothing could be more comfortable than the Brooks, and people kept talking about these Hokas, and so I finally went and tried some on, and they're like clouds, like walking on clouds, but they look like freaking platform shoes. The heels. I'll just take them off. The heels are like this freaking big. I mean, this whole thing is your cushion, right? So, I mean, it makes you a little bit. I'm already 6'3", so and you add another 2 inches there. But I mean, they look the greatest. They're okay. I'm not going to say it's the most attractive looking shoe I've ever seen. And when it comes to healthcare, that's not cleanable. You'd have to wear a bootie, right? But Hoka just came out with a healthcare shoe that I believe it comes in white and black, solid white and solid black, and it's solid leather so that you can wipe it off at the hospital. So if you're looking for shoes, I mean, the best thing you can do is try them on, do what you like the best. But I posted a poll on our Facebook group once and said, what's your favorite shoe? And everybody chimed in. And so I made an article out of the data. You were asking me about doing research earlier. That's kind of my way of doing research on things that aren't quite as stringent as school research. But I took all that data and I said, here's your buyer's guide. Here's what everybody said. Here's the number one choice. Here's the number two choice. And then somebody added in those silly Yeezy shoes that are like, I don't know, $200 or $500 or whatever they were. Totally goofy shoes. But I added that into the review as well as a joke. So, in fact, while we're at it, since you guys are being so great, I'm going to do a search on my blog for the word shoes. And we'll just grab that. There it is. Oh, and I actually, they because I've bought from their website, they send me coupon stuff or when they're on sale. And when I get that, I'll post it on the blog and on our Facebook group too, to show you there's a sale. So like, here's an example where I said, hey, if you're going to get some for Christmas, there's a sale right now on them. And here's a link to it. But here is a link to the article about all the different shoes. And that one is another thing about a coupon, 25% off. Brought them down to $67 at that point. So yeah, how did I get on the shoes? I guess I'm just telling you, make sure you get a good, comfortable pair. Giveaways. Maybe that was it. Zesty's on. Zesty says, hello. Just wanted to say thanks. Your blog and channel have helped me a lot. You also answered a question of mine via email. Cool. I'm about to finish up my second semester of tech school. Right on, man. Hey, that's why I'm here. Maybe that sounds corny. I don't care. But I just felt like, man, when I got into it, nobody told me jack. I had to figure out. I'm sitting in class, I don't know, 2 weeks in, and they start to talk about BEs. And I'm like, hold up. Nobody told me about BEs in the walkthrough or the orientation. Not that that's a big deal, but there's just so much stuff that we do that the general public doesn't know. Like, the fact that you think, oh, an x-ray tech takes x-rays. Dude, we cover the ICU, which is nasty, bugs not critter bugs, but all kinds of bacteria and stuff that you got to be careful about and spreading it. And patients intubated with 18 different lines everywhere that you've got to maneuver. So you got the ICU, you got the ED, you got floor patients, telemetry, outpatient walkie-talkies coming in. You got mobile you got to do, you got fluoroscopy. You've got, there's just so many different things. You can get called to the OR to do a sponge count. You could be in the OR running a C-arm. Now they got O-arms. There's so many things that just a tech does that the public doesn't know. So part of my blog, there's some articles on there that help educate the general public. But there's a lot of articles just answering questions from people that are interested. Do they want a career in the field? And so I'm glad it helped you. That's what I wanted to hear. That's why I do this. So Darnell, how would you professionally tell a doctor they ordered something that was not needed or ordered incorrectly? You got to feel that out. That depends on the doc. I would approach them and just say, hey, if you don't know them at all, just say, hey, Dr. Smith, I got an order for a humerus elbow forearm wrist hand on the 7-year-old. And I just wondered, where I talked to the patient, they're back there right now, and their pain is up here in the humerus. And they didn't say they fell on that side, so I can see why you're concerned about the whole thing. But I would really like to save them as much radiation as I can. That's my job. Thing called a LARA. And I could do that by getting you a humerus and a forearm and a hand, because as I'm doing the hand, I can also get the wrist. And as I'm doing the forearm, it'll also get some of the wrist. So we can eliminate that wrist exam and we can eliminate that elbow exam when we do these other 3 parts. Would that be okay with you if I cancel those 2 exams? And there you go. Or you say, would you mind if I ask the HUC to cancel those for you? Because they may be too busy to do it themselves, and you may not have the authority to cancel a doctor's order. So however that works at your facility, but you're always presenting it from saving the patient radiation. Plus, if it's a trauma or if they're in any kind of pain at all, you're saving them from having to move around and causing the patient more pain. It's not very often that you'll get a doctor that says, do what I say and don't you dare contradict me. I had one of those. She didn't know what she was doing, and it was apparent, and she ended up losing her job. But she kept ordering CTs on everybody because it was an ER out in the middle of nowhere, and most doctors are trained on how to read X-rays, but they're not trained anywhere beyond that as far as ED docs. And this ED doc wasn't trained very well, and she didn't know how to read X-rays. So instead, if I did an X-ray, she sent an X-ray out for a read, that radiologist would call and say, hey, you need to be reading your own X-rays because it costs us more money to send it out on the weekend. And so she just started ordering CTs on everybody. So I got like a 7-year-old with a knee laceration, and she ordered a knee CT. And I said, hey, that's a lot more radiation to do a CT for a laceration. Why don't I start with an X-ray and see if it shows you what you need? And she blew up and got all bent out of shape. And so I did the CT like I was told. And I don't know, 6 months later, she was gone. But you're going to come across that. Just do what you're supposed to do. That's the best advice I can give you. Darnell, you want me to give away a Mosby book? Is that what you're saying? I like Mosby. I think I did most of my stuff out of Appleton Lang, but yeah, I can. What I usually do is give away Amazon gift cards, and then you guys can just pick whatever you like. I like to support the techs that make their own markers too, T-shirts, mugs, that kind of stuff. I always allow them to promote on my Facebook page. I give a hard time to equipment people, to GE for trying to sell a $2 million CT scanner in my group. I'm like, dude, these are mostly techs. They don't even make that decision. And if there are managers in the group, but if they want information, they'll call you. You don't need to come spam my channel. So I don't even let the vendors of equipment in. In fact, there's a notice at the top that says, yeah, you guys were pretty much voted out in a recent poll. So there's plenty of if you look on Facebook for a radiology group, there's a ton of them, and half of them are crap. It's just filled with spam and junk and palm reading sessions. I mean, just all kinds of crazy stuff. So there's only 4, I'll tell you, there's only 4, and I'll even give them to you. There's only 4 Facebook groups that I recommend. And I'm not saying the others don't have value, so don't get me wrong, but there's only 4 that I frequent, probably daily. I probably look at them daily. There's mine, which is the Radiologic Technologist group, and that's this one. And then a guy named Chris Cotting, who I believe he's a nuclear medicine tech, but he actually travels. Like he traveled during COVID. I believe he went to Washington and volunteered at a hospital there that was short on techs. And he's very religious and involved in his church. And that's his side. They don't talk religion on the group. I'm just telling you a little bit about his character. So check him out at the Radiology Technologist Life. And then the third Facebook group that I like is Radiography Tips and Pathology. I've talked to the moderator admin, but I don't really know them. But I really like I like the way they take care of the group. And that's really, I moderate another one, but I'm only moderating it to help out. I'm not really, I won't say I'm not keen on it because I put a lot of time into trying to clean it up. But it's called Radiology, and it's got 21,000, almost 22,000 members in it. So there's people there looking for answers. So I feel obligated to go there and answer questions, but there's just so much junk that I have to delete out of that thing every day that it really is a pain in the butt. So you won't get anything there that you can't get in one of those other ones. So stick to those three as far as Facebook groups go. And if you want something really cool, check this out. If you've hung in this long, I'll give you a little bonus. You guys have all heard of Reddit, I'm sure. There's a subreddit called Radiology that they actually do stuff we don't talk about in our groups. I mean, I try to go to this Reddit as often as possible, and they'll have stuff I hadn't even seen. I mean, a lot of it's memes. Like right now, there's a meme on the front there, but there's a lot of radiologists on the Reddit subreddit. On the Radiology subreddit. And so you'll see a lot of questions posted about medical school. And a lot of docs will chime in about, residency and all that stuff about becoming a radiologist. And that's always been interesting to me. So, if you're geeking out, if you're liking radiography, if you like it as much as I do, or even half as much as I do, and you just want to stay on top of things and read things, those Facebook groups and that Reddit sub group will keep you updated. And then you should all know, of course, about Aunt Minnie. Aunt Minnie, as goofy as the name is kind of our Drudge Report, if you will. It's our news source. And I check that out. I try to check it daily. They post articles for every modality. And you can sign up and you can become kind of a member for free of different modalities. So if you like CT, if you're a CT tech and you're interested in ultrasound, you can pick both, and it sends you daily updates on what's going on in those two. So I really like Aunt Minnie. You should check that out from time to time. See where are we at? I'm getting behind on questions. Zesty, I will agree that there is quite a bit more to this career, for better or worse, than I initially thought in deciding on it. You don't know what you don't know exactly. But there's so many opportunities, right? That's another thing nobody told you, but there's so many opportunities. If you get tired of doing x-ray, go learn one of the other 9 modalities, or go start selling x-ray equipment, or go start fixing x-ray equipment, or start your own mobile company shooting x-rays where you're the boss and you're the only employee. Your resources have helped me better understand the scope of the job and detail and pay. Facebook groups and the Radiology Reddit page have also helped me. Yeah. Excellent. That's another thing is we were always, in the field, we were threatened by administration and human resources that don't ever talk about your pay with your peers. That's a big no. You get fired. Actually, you can't. And now that somebody at, Google came out and started talking about, or they were talking about their pay at work and they got fired, and they came out as a whistleblower, and I think they won a case or something. So more people now are aware that you can talk about your rate of pay at work. So that's what I really like about these Facebook groups, is somebody to get on there and say, hey, I'm moving to Maryland. I'm living in Texas. What's an x-ray tech with 3 years of experience make over there? And people start chiming in and telling them. It's awesome. Nowhere else are you going to get that. But let me warn you, the same old rules still apply. If your HR tells you not to discuss and you do because you can, but that doesn't mean they're not going to get pissed at you. And that doesn't mean they're not going to put your name on a little black list that says, okay, Ron's done this one thing already we're not too happy about. If he gets 2 more marks, we'll find a way to get rid of him, because that crap still happens. So, I had a guy reply to one of my comments on one of these Facebook groups the other day, because I was talking about this, and he said, well, you should have just told them that they can't tell you not to. Well, brother, that's easier said than done. Yeah, I can do that. And yeah, I can talk about whatever I want if HIPAA's not involved. But if I get my name put on a blacklist and it caused me to lose my job down the road, was that worth me proving to them that I could do it? Heck no. So be careful what you do. I shared the other day that I worked on my birthday this year, May 15th. I was gowned up in full PPE right in the middle of COVID. I mean, that's when they didn't know what you're supposed to be wearing, so we wore everything. I had an N95 with goggles, with a hood, full gown, booties, this big boot kind of thing you had to put on, double gloves, And the nurses were laughing at me because I'm 6'3", 280, 290. And they're like, holy cow, look at that big Martian. And they were taking pictures of me. So I'm posing, and I said, send those pictures to me. And I put one up on Facebook and said, look, I'm working on my birthday. I'm geared up. Here I am. I may be the manager, but I still do exams. And I got called into human resources, and they almost wrote me up because almost every hospital, if not all of them, have a policy that you can't take pictures or video inside of the hospital because of HIPAA violations. And I said, I didn't show any HIPAA. And they go, no, but you took a picture inside. I said, actually, it wasn't me. I didn't take, if you notice, I'm in the picture, but I didn't take the picture. And they said, well, give us the names of who did. And I'm like, I'm not turning like that. And they're like, well, and then that made them grumpy. So they gave me a piece of paper that had a written write-up or whatever. They scribbled it out and wrote verbal. And I'm like, whatever, jack wagons. So just be careful at your jobs. That's becoming a big thing now in the hospitals. Techs are taking pictures and selfies, and you've seen it on Facebook and everywhere. There's a department of nurses doing some little TikTok song and dance or whatever, and it's looking all cute. But you can still get fired for that. There's some X-ray channels I recommend on YouTube, like X-Ray Ray. He's doing a great job documenting his path through X-ray tech school. I think he just finished his first year. I recommend checking him out. But he's doing some of his videos from inside the hospital or wherever he's at. He may be in a clinic. Maybe he's in a clinic and they don't have that rule. Maybe that's how he's safe. But I'm just warning you, be super careful about taking selfies or pictures or doing little videos or whatever inside the hospitals. Even if you're in a bathroom, if they can prove you were in the hospital bathroom and there's a policy that says no video or pictures in the hospital period, you're still on the hook. So enough preaching there. Let's see. Darnell says, I'm in 2 groups. Cool. I'm in a ton. They're not all radiology related, but I really like Facebook groups. If I can figure out how to move the forum to my blog so that we're not under the thumb of Facebook, I'll do it. I've been working on it. But the forum I inflated on my WordPress theme doesn't allow pictures, and we're imaging people, for crying out loud. So we want to show pictures. So that forum didn't work. But as soon as I can find a good plugin that allows us to upload pictures, I'm gonna try to open that up for everybody, because a lot of people are leaving Facebook because of all the shenanigans they're pulling. So when I figure that out, I'll let you guys know. Maria, do you have any posts on entrance interviews? Yeah, didn't I post that already? Let me try. Go to the blog, type in. Yeah, I posted it earlier. It was the Jackrabbit Joe story, talks about it. And I believe on my YouTube channel, I have one way back when I started the channel. It's me in like a blue business shirt, and the title is something about reverse engineering the interview questions. And I have all my documents as an administrator. I have the interview questions and I have the answers of what we look for in those questions. And I share those with you. I say, hey, if we say, tell me about a time when you didn't get along with somebody on your team, I then tell you why we asked it and what we're looking for in the answer. So go find that video on the YouTube channel. It's one of the first ones I did. I think I call it reverse engineering. Let's see. Where I look back up in the comments section, find the link to Jackrabbit Joe, and check that out for interview questions, and check my videos for that as well. I'm not seeing it. No, there it is. Here it is. So there's Joe and all the stuff he did to get a job. Would you consider becoming a mentor? Yeah, I actually posted that once. Where did I put that at? I think I put it on my website, that I could sign up for like 20-minute sessions or whatever via Zoom and mentor that kind of thing. And I kind of put it up thinking I'd love to do it, but is anybody going to care? And I never got any feedback on it, so I just took it down. But anybody that, because I've had several mentors, and any wise man will tell you that successful people are rarely successful on their own, flying solo. They've always had somebody like, Arnold Schwarzenegger had mentors, and many what would be considered successful people in different arenas had mentors. So I'd be happy to mentor you in whatever way you think is helpful to you, through emails or Zoom calls or whatever. That works for me. I think we're caught up. So hour 15. Any other questions on there? I've got some scrolling through these articles. Reminded me of some stuff. So in case you ever thought about being a traveling tech, here's an article on that and how much they make and how to get into it. And when it comes to studying, I kind of did one big massive article on a bunch of different scientific methods for studying that are proven to work. So check out that article on how to study for your ART board exam registry, proven scientific study methods. There's stuff that I still use in that today for my doctorate program, like setting an egg timer to go off every 20 minutes, because you retain more if you learn in spurts versus way back in the day when I first started college. I'd stay up all night drinking coffee and cram and memorize everything all night at a local restaurant. And then I'd go take the exam first thing in the morning, and then I'd go home and crash. And that worked, but not for long-term retention. This 20-minute method that you'll see in that article is better for long-term retention, which is what we need in our career, because you build on what you do in radiology. How is your hospital managing the newly hired radiology technologist in your hospital? I guess that depends on what you mean. I could interpret that a couple different ways. We have an onboarding process that usually, the method I like is to put a new person 1 week on the floor, 1 week in the ER, 1 week in the OR, and 1 week in fluoro, so that the OR gets you used to the C-arm and stuff like that. The floor just gets you used to where everything is throughout the hospital. The ER gets you used to the trauma stuff. And then the fluoro is all your BEs, lumbar punctures, and all that stuff in your RF rooms. That's how we onboard. And then we have a competency checklist that we have all of our techs do every year. We have a person who's an educator. That's their title, their job title, radiology educator. And their job is to sit with each employee every year and go through this list of competencies, just like what you do in school when you go comp something. We go through that every year just to make sure that every tech stays comfortable, because there may be, let's say somebody went and worked at an outpatient clinic. Let's say we put them in an ortho clinic where they just did joints for a year, and then we brought them back to the hospital. And through this checklist, we find out that they haven't been to the OR in a year. Well, that tells us we need to get them some time in the OR and get brushed back up on the C-arm. So the competency list, there's a model called the Donna Wright model, WRIGHT. The Donna Wright model is a very popular model for keeping employees competent. Darnell, I'll grab that email address and just send you an email, and then you can reply with what it is you have in mind. If I had, I'll just use my Hotmail because it's open. So there, I just subject line is "This is Ron." You can send your ideas to that one. Where are we at? I don't think I caught the grammar mistakes, brother, so don't worry about that. Okay, so I guess we're caught up. I think, unless you guys have anything else, I think I may take a little lunch break. It's about that time, so cool. So check out the blog. If you ever have questions, figure out the verb or the noun of the question, right? And go plug in the whole question if you have to into the search box. It's on the right side of the page. And see if I don't have something written on it. You can also, you're welcome, guys. Yeah, we can talk about CT. You can also go to the top of my blog where it says sitemap. And that's where I try, every time I write an article, I try to go back and just post the title and keep a running list of titles. So you can kind of go there like a table of contents, but it's easier to do a search. And then I'm also trying to add tags. There's categories to these articles. So you can do a category for students and find all articles that were tagged with the word student. So let's see. Some of my colleagues advised me to learn CT before MRI. You want my real opinion on that? Just between you and me and the internet. MRI techs think they're special. They think what they do is black magic. And here's what I would challenge you to do, just for yourself. Go look at the CT console, the CT keyboard, and the monitor, and the window, and the scanner, and then go to the MRI room and look at the keyboard, and the monitor, and the window, and the scanner. Pretty similar. Different technologies, don't get me wrong, magnetic resonance, computed tomography. But then if you can, watch them do a scan. CT, you lay them on the table. If you're doing let's say you're doing a chest. You lay them flat on their back, you have them raise their arms above their head, and you put them through head first, right? And then you set your laser lines above the apices and below the costophrenetic. Let's see, for if you're doing let's say you're doing chest, abdomen, pelvis, then you're going down to the pubic symphysis. And then you also line, your horizontal line. You got to tell the machine where to center on your body. If you don't center it halfway through the side, then you could scan like from here to here and miss everything. You got to tell it to scan from here back. So CT, you tell it where to scan. You push go. It does a scout, which shows you where they're on the table, how they're positioned on the table. Maybe you didn't have them centered. Like if I'm doing my head and my hands are my table from left to right, maybe I'm like this with the patient on the table. So it does a scout and shows you where the body is. It looks like an x-ray and shows you where the body is. So if I see the head like that, then I can either go out there and move the patient to the center, or I can grab these little tools on the screen and move the tools and center me, right? So then once you got the patient where you want, then you hit scan and it scans them. Bada boom, bada bing, scans them. You're done. You go to MRI and you're going to do a chest, abdomen, pelvis. Actually, I don't know if MRI can do an entire chest, abdomen, pelvis, but it's been a while since I've done MRI. But you lay them on the table. Of course, you got to tell them. You got to go through a whole bunch of rigmarole with MRI patients first. Whole questionnaire. Do you have any implants? Whole big to do before you can scan them. But let's say you did all that, you got them on the scanner. You lay them on the scanner with their head in a holder or just flat, with their arms up. You put a coil around them, and then you line them up inside the scanner with your crosshairs, and then you go back to your console. You hit a button, and it does a scout, and then you move things around if you need to because they're not centered. And once you get them in the right place, then you hit go, and then it acquires the images in a couple of sequences, and then you're done, basically. I mean, in MRI, there's actually 5 sequences. So you do the first one, and then you have to change some parameters. That's where it gets more difficult in MRI. You got to change some parameters and do the seconds. So a sequence could be 40 images, 50 images. So you do your first sequence, then you got to set up the second sequence, but you don't have to get them to go do anything. You just have to tell the computer, okay, now change it to a FATSAT, or change it to a different algorithm, or, the equivalent in CT would be changed to a bone window or a soft tissue window or whatever. You acquire your sequences in MRI, and then you're done. So for the most part, you're still using the same landmarks. I mean, I remember doing an MRI shoulder, you actually lined up to the angle of the joint, where in CT, you You just went from above to below and you scanned it. So there's some little nuances, but it's not, MRI is not that hard. If you learned, and maybe this is why they said it, if you learn CT first and then you go to MRI, it's not going to be that hard, because a lot of those fundamentals, put them on the table, line them up, put them in the proper amount. Are they head first, feet first? What coil do you put around them, or whatever for MRI? A lot of those gross things are similar. But at MRI, you've got a lot more liability, in my opinion, because if they lied to you about what they have in their body, or if they just don't know, or if they're unconscious or whatever, that's on you. So do you have to learn CT first? No. If you're just in it for the money and you're really not interested in CT, just go straight to MRI if they let you, because you'll make more money in MRI than you will in CT. And as I was saying the other day to somebody, they said, how stressful are CT, MRI, and ultrasound? And I said, CT is stressful in the fact that you turn and burn and go real fast and get your traumas in there. MRI is stressful in the fact that if something goes wrong, it's your butt, because that patient didn't tell you all the right answers or whatever. And these things take so long that as soon as somebody is late to their test, now everybody's backed up the rest of the day and they're all mad at you. Different stressors for these different departments. But no, you don't have to do CT first. It makes it easier to learn MRI if you learn CT first, but you don't have to. Thanks for your time. Good night. Hey, thanks to Ligos, if I'm saying that right. Maria, thank you. Darnell, what is your favorite scan now versus when you're in school? Well, if I had to pick a favorite modality, that would be really hard, but because I like different modalities for different reasons. I liked ultrasound because it was intimate. You got closer to the patient, and you like looking at a baby inside of the mom's body is really, it's intimate. You connect with your patient. It was really cool when you can show a mother what her baby looks like, or that it's, wiggling its fingers and things like that. That's a really cool thing, in my opinion. And you put a lot of minds at ease in ultrasound, but it can also go the other way. But, there's a lot of times moms say, I haven't felt the baby move in a month or in a day or whatever, and it's fine. And you give them that peace of mind. I really like ultrasound, but I also like CT because it's so quick and fairly easy once you learn it. And you get so much data in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So, you get somebody coming into the ED with abdominal pain, and the doctor's like, scan them. And you put them on the table, and 10 minutes later, you see they've got a ruptured appendix, or small bowel obstruction, or, whatever is going on in there, foreign body or whatever. So CT is cool because you can get a lot of data, and there's all the 3D reconstructions you can do, coronal sagittal recons. I mean, it's some really cool technology in CT. And then, X-ray is valuable just because it's so quick and easy, and a quick diagnosis. You can see things really quickly. Nuclear medicine is interesting. I never did nuclear medicine, but nuclear medicine's role is to tell you if something's working or not. CT will tell you physically what it looks like. Is it enlarged? You can measure it. Is it enlarged? Is it blocked? Is there fluid around it? Nuclear medicine can tell you, is your gallbladder pushing, or is there an obstruction? Nuclear medicine can tell you how things are functioning. Nuclear medicine, I believe, is the only brain death exam we can do. If you get a comatose patient and you want to know if their brain's still functioning, you can do a test in nuclear medicine. And I got an article on that where you can see what a functioning brain looks like and a non-functioning on a nuclear medicine brain death scan. Never got much into mammo. You can't do that as a guy. I mean, you can, but who would want to? No offense to any of you that might be doing it. DEXA, super simple thing. You lay a patient on a table and you're scanning for bone density, osteoporotic or osteoporosis. There's techs that do DEXA scans. That's all they do. and they may make $25 an hour and up, but it's a super simple thing. Look, search YouTube for DEXA scan and see how easy that is. But you got to be licensed as an X-ray tech to do it because it radiates. So IR is super cool because you're doing operations on people. But I don't like to stand on my feet for hours on end. I like to move around. So I didn't like being in the OR, and I didn't like IR because I don't like to stand there for a long period of time. Of course, now that I got these hookahs, maybe that would change. But it's exciting to watch, operating on a person. To me, it's exciting, but it's not worth standing. If I could sit there like the anesthesiologist does, reading the book the whole time, that might be better. But we got to stand there, and oftentimes the abuse to a rad tech happens in the OR because you get surgeons who yell for everything, and you'll hear about it eventually. We have a hard time up there in the OR with these surgeons. Who did I miss? I probably missed a couple modalities, right? PET's an offshoot from nuke. PET is at the molecular level, so you're looking at really tiny stuff. That's all I can think of right now. I'm sure I'm missing somebody. Let's see, Zesty. I guess Darnell, the last part was now versus then. I still feel the same way. I still like ultrasound a lot. I still like CT a lot. I still am impressed with what X-ray. X-ray is where you use your creativity. X-ray is where you try and figure out how am I going to X-ray that bone when that person won't move it out of this position, or whatever, or it's gnarled up and you got to get two different views. X-ray lets you think outside of the box quite a bit if you're in the right place. Let's see. Seems like a lot of people get certification MRI or CT after rad. Why would someone want to go into one or the other? Pros and cons. Well, yeah, pay. You could be tired of being an X-ray, so you want to do something else. You can want better pay. There are techs that stay in X-ray their whole career. There are probably, 20, 30% of them. The rest of them move on. If you're in a critical access hospital or a small hospital, they want you to cross-train because they want you to be able to cover multiple jobs. And they want to put less people there, right? If there's only 5 of you covering an entire hospital, they can't work all 5 of you at the same time. They got to work 2 and 1 on the weekend or whatever. So the more you can do, the more valuable you are. And they should pay you at the highest rate of pay for whatever you're licensed in. So if you're licensed in X-ray, CT, and MR, and you're the only one there and you're doing X-rays all day, you should be getting MRI pay for doing X-rays all day because that's what you're licensed in. But that's up to your facility. That's how I did it. So, people move on because they get tired of X-ray. They move on because they want more pay. They move on because they like the modality. Some people only go to X-ray because that's the starting point to get to the advanced modality. The ART requires that you follow certain pathways, but things are changing. There's a lot of, like when I went to ultrasound school, you had to be one of 5 ancillary, ancillary degrees to get into the ultrasound program. So you either had to be an X-ray tech or a respiratory therapist or a dental hygienist or a nurse, or there was one other one, physical therapist, I think. If you had any one of those licenses, you can get into the ultrasound program. So I did X-ray school. It wasn't my intention to go straight into ultrasound. I did X-ray school for the job, and then I learned about ultrasound and applied and got in. But now you can go straight into ultrasound school without going through X-ray first in some places. And I highly recommend that. If all you want to do is ultrasound, don't even bother with X-ray. Just go straight into ultrasound and start making that bigger money because ultrasound will start you mid-30s on up per hour. And it's completely unrelated. What you learn in X-ray is completely unrelated to what you learn other than patient care and ergonomics, So that's why people would, pros and cons of each. So the pay's in an article, but it basically starts at X-ray. You get paid a couple extra dollars more for CT, and then you get paid a couple extra dollars more for MR. And on that tier with MR is right about where nuclear medicine is. And then you get paid more if you go from nuke to PET, because that's another license. And you get paid more if you're in the IR, because that's kind of more specialty. I think that's the highest modality that I usually see when I'm at a facility. Is IR is the highest paid. But ultrasound is kind of right above the MRI Nuke Med, it's kind of right in line, but it pays a little bit more. Mammography is probably in line with MRI. That's all I can think of on the modalities. But I listed pay in some of those. You can probably do a search on with the word pay in my search bar and find all the articles on pay. I took data one time because I said, hey, you know what? People were going, well, I'm going to go work in California because an X-ray tech can make $55 an hour. And I said, you're going about it all wrong, dude, because the cost of living there is ridiculous. So there's an article, 11 different ways to pay. I did a search for pay. Here's an article, 11 different ways to pay for X-ray school. The differences between a Tech 1, a Tech 2, and a Tech 3, and I show the job descriptions of each and what you have to do to get to the next level. 5 reasons why rad techs are being forced to burn their own PTO. Some generic I answer your questions live stuff. Let's see, deciding between CT and MRI, which should I do? You guys might be interested in that one. How to be a CT tech. That I got an article there. How much do X-ray techs make per hour with 4 years experience? I'm looking for, you know what I'm going to do? I wrote an article that shows you how to keep the most money in your pocket. So I'm going to do a search for the word state because I break it down state by state. There it is. So let me copy that and share that to you. So I took a survey from, who did the survey? The ASRT. It's an annual survey where they ask all the techs that are members what they're making. And they report back how much they make a year. And then, and I believe they report them by state. And then I took data from, I think it wasn't a government website. It's the MERIC, the Missouri Economic Research and Information Center. But it's a nationwide database of expenses like cost of living, electricity, transportation, food, all those types of things. And they index them and give them a rating. And I correlated the rate of pay in a state to these expenses in that same state. And I calculated a value on that. And then I listed it. I basically came up with which state do you keep the most of the money you make? Because it's not, you don't go to California, make $55 an hour and keep $55 in your pocket for every hour you work. You probably get $5 in your pocket. And what came out was Wyoming was the top place. Wyoming doesn't pay the best, but it also doesn't have very high cost of living. So you get to keep more of what you earn. So it's important that you understand that when you go to get a job, it's not, I mean, yes, it's about making as much as possible, but it doesn't matter if you're making $50 an hour and at the end of the day, you only take home 3 of them because you're living in New York City. It's not worth it. So this article that I just posted breaks that down. Let's see if I got more. Yeah. So I called it the rank and rating system, the unofficial rank and rating. And so Wyoming, they were making $26.83 an hour. And I would say that in the groups, the forums on Facebook, and somebody from Wyoming would say, I don't make near that, or I make a lot more than that. This hourly data is from research that was done from the ASRT, and it's an average. So if you're in a small town making less, it's because you're in a small town. If you're making a lot more and you're in the big city, it's because you're in the big city, and they take cost of living into account for that. The average rate, so Wyoming has a living index, cost of living index of 90.5, which means it's closer to 100, the easier it is on your pocketbook. So they've got a 90.5 index with $26.83 an hour, and that put them in the first number 1 spot. Number 2 is Washington. They make $32.11 an hour, but they're I don't think they have is it no state grocery tax or something like no state tax, something over there that helps out a lot. New Mexico's in 3rd place, Texas, blah, 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 and you can follow it down. California, and this poll came in at number 10 at $39.08 an hour. The worst place is Hawaii, where you do make $33 an hour. but it all gets eaten up in fees. And I had that backwards. The higher that index number, the more costly it was, because Hawaii's at 190% on the expense ratio at 33.64 an hour. So check that out if you want to see where you can keep the most money in your pocket. Sapphire, welcome aboard. What's the best route to become an MRI tech? You want the dirty little secret? The dirty little secret is I think you can find places now that will take you in without an X-ray license. Because you have to ask yourself, what does an X-ray license have to do with MRI? MRI doesn't use X-rays. But the traditional route was going through the ARRT to be an X-ray tech. And you're an X-ray tech at the hospital, and then you get cross-trained in MRI at the hospital, and then you go sit for your boards after you do enough tests, enough examinations. But I think they're starting to realize X-ray, you don't need a radiation license to do an MRI. So I think there are some MRI schools, and this would be a good question to go search on those Facebook groups I talk about. And I've linked to them in this comment section, so scroll back and look at it. But people have said, can I go to MRI? Can I be an MRI tech without being an X-ray tech? And I believe people have posted links to schools that do that. The second part of that question that you have to find out is the facility where you work. Do they require an X-ray license to do MRI? Because see, the state has requirements. Like I live in Idaho and they don't even require an X-ray license here. If I'm a doctor and I got an X-ray room, I can say, hey, Secretary Sally, go shoot an X-ray on Timmy. And that's legal here. There's only like 7 states left that don't have to have a license, and Idaho's one of them. But the hospitals here in Idaho know better. And the hospitals require licensure, not a state, but a national. So the ART license is required here to get a job in a hospital. Now, where this applies to you in MRI is there could be an outpatient imaging center, not in a hospital, that does MRI, and they may not care what kind of license you have. They may not even require a license because it's Idaho and you don't have to have any license. Just like the doctors letting secretaries do X-rays here, that's a real thing. There could be a doctor who owns an MRI scanner, and he says, look, as long as you can show me high quality images, I don't care what your license is because the state doesn't require it. And that also means he's going to pay you a lot less because you're not licensed. If you were licensed, you'd know that you're worth more, and he would know that. That's part of why we're still fighting getting licensure in Idaho, because doctors don't want to pay $25 an hour for an X-ray tech when they can pay their secretary $8 an hour to do it. So the quickest way to becoming now your question is the best route. I struggle with that because of my history that I just told you about ultrasound. If I started all over, I could go straight into ultrasound now and not have to go through X-ray school first. 20 years ago, you had to do it that way. You had to go through X-ray first. If I'm just in it for the quickest path possible, I'm going to look for an MRI school that'll let me in without any other prerequisites, and I'm going to be in touch with where I think I want to work and ask them if they require licensure. If they do, then you got to start figuring out what licensure can I get if I go work for this, if I go to school at this MRI place that's not requiring X-ray first. Is this making sense? The safest route is go to X-ray school. Go to X-ray school, get your X-ray license, and then get cross-trained in MRI, and then sit for your MRI board, and then you're legitimate across the board. Nobody would question you. But that doesn't mean you can't go get an MRI, cross-trained somewhere and go be an MRI tech somewhere. So that should be just about as clear as mud. If you want, if that caused more questions, just ask me more questions. Best route is I just struggle with that because I don't want to tell somebody to go to school for 2 years for X-ray if it's not required. And you do benefit from that because you learn about patient safety and proper lifting techniques and ergonomics and starting IVs and all that stuff. But you're not going to get an MRI license from the ART if you don't go to X-ray school first. I'm pretty sure if you go to the ART website, I think they're going to say, I think we could do ART primary pathway. So they've got a primary pathway and post-primary pathway. Should just call it secondary. But primary pathways means that's where you start. So you can go to an ART approved program and do MRI, nuke med, radiation therapy, X-ray, ultrasound, because this isn't the gold standard for ultrasound. The ARDMS is. And now they've added vascular sonography at the ARRT, which is new. But then let's look for post-primary, because what this means is you have to go to, you can go straight into MRI as your first school. The ART recognizes that. So here, I'll just give it to you. If MRI was only listed under post-primary, then that means you got to do something else first, and you can do MRI as your secondary. But they've got MRI listed as a primary. And I don't think it's always been that way. There's an asterisk. You can earn an MRI credential using the primary or post-primary eligibility. So yeah, according to this, you can go straight into MRI without going to X-ray school first. So why would you? So it's going to depend on where you work. That's where you got to start. Is if you don't know where you're going to work, then I guess wherever you want to live, ask those hospitals in that area, do you require an X-ray license in order for me to do MRI, or can I just be licensed in MRI? So that's a good question, and that's always under debate. Always under debate, because the old way we used to do things was everybody had to jump through all these stupid hoops, and we'd always like California's fluoroscopy license. Why do we have to do an extra license? Well, it went away finally because it was ridiculous. How can I start an X-ray school in my area? Well, that's a pretty big question there, Deborah. Gosh, I'm not even sure where to start with that one. Go to my blog, theradiologictechnologist.com, and go to the sitemap. Here's the link. And just start going through the articles that I list on here and read the ones that apply towards school. Because that's a big question. You got to find out what else in your area. You got to interview them, because just like you're going to pay them for your education, you want to interview them to see who's going to give you the best education and the biggest bang for your buck. So your public schools are going to be $8,000, and your private schools could be $60,000. But your public school could have a 3-year wait, and your private school could get you in right away. So do you want to wait 5 years to graduate or 2 years to graduate? Can you make more money getting out faster in the private school than you can if you wait all 5 years? And then there's a lot of other questions. So read through that sitemap, read through all those articles, and hit me back if you have more specific questions. Deb says, can I start my own rad tech school on the side as a business? Well, I don't see why not. You have to jump through all the hoops. You probably have to be a licensed radiographer. I'm pretty sure you have to be a master's to teach in a radiography school. So you would want to talk to either the ARRT or JCERT. That's an accrediting mechanism that the ARRT recognizes. So the ARRT holds all the keys. And if they say JCERT is allowed to make sure schools are doing the right thing, then you can go to those schools and take their test. But if the ART, if some schools are accredited by Bob's Fish and Chips accreditation, and the ART doesn't recognize that, if you go to that school and pass and graduate, you can't go take their test because they don't acknowledge it. So the ART holds all the keys. So I would say start down that path if you want to start a school. Zesty's taking off for finals. Good luck, buddy. Sapphire, thanks for the info. Detective Awesome's on board. Because of the CMS cuts, our hospital is going to want more hybrid techs to balance the budgets. Yeah, so that's a good question, because in a large hospital, it's really hard to use a multimodality tech. How do I say that? If you got a large hospital, you can't. You can't. You're gonna have a super busy CT department, and if your guy's trained or your gal's trained in CT and X-ray, they're just gonna be stuck in CT all day. But if you're in a small hospital where docs send you an X-ray and you do that real quick, and then docs send you a CT and you do that real quick, and then docs send you an ultrasound and you do that real quick, you can bounce around a lot more in a critical access hospital or a smaller hospital. I talked about that CMS thing quite a bit yesterday, if you want to look back at the live stream yesterday. But I'll tell you a little secret, because I've been in administration for over a decade. A little secret is they're always going to say there's something. Administration is always going to say we need to save money. We always need to cut expenses. And they're always going to come after your hours. They're always going to try to stretch you thinner. They're going to say, oh, you got, like they love to hit MRI. MRI, you need 2 people at the scanner at all times. I used to struggle with that because you sit there and watch an MRI tech, and really you only need 1 person to sit there and do the exam. But that's not why you need a second person. You need the second person for safety, and they can be doing paperwork, getting the next patient ready, getting another scanner ready, whatever, and turn and be more efficient that way. And administrators will come along and say, well, if I got 2 techs working mornings and 2 techs working evenings, why can't I spread them out and give one of them a day off or something? And so spread 2 techs out to cover the whole day, and then put the third guy right in the middle that kind of helps him out a little bit in the beginning and helps him a little bit out in the end. And then I'll have to pay 3 techs instead of 4. Well, then you just exposed that first shift person to being on their own for 5 hours of their 10-hour shift. And if a patient codes on their table, what are you going to do? You only got 1 guy who needs to stay in there with that patient. They can't run and get anybody. They hit the code button, but there's a lot involved in that. You really need 2 people. If you don't want to pay 2 techs to be in there, then put somebody else in there, transport or something. But because of the CMS cuts, our hospital is going to want to hybrid techs balance. So I am biased. And of course, this is all my opinion, but I'm biased because I'm a multimodality tech. I know my value, and I know my value to the hospital. And so I have always promoted cross training. I think it builds loyalty and it rewards techs who do hard work. But there are some facilities, there are some directors of imaging that don't cross train. And I wrote an article about that, like most things. If you do a search for I think cross training, you just do a search for cross, where I lay out the pros and cons of both training from within and training from outside. And there are pros and cons to both. Oh, I picked up all my Rad Tech Week crossword puzzles. I put out a crossword puzzle every day during Rad Tech Week. Anyway, here's a link to an article I wrote about these cuts specifically and what they mean and what you can do about them. But let me find this cross-training article, because I did lay out pros and cons. There it is. And this was written really to administrators. This was something I wrote and posted on LinkedIn. And you guys should all be on LinkedIn. And I've got an article why you should have a profile on LinkedIn, because that's how I got found for my last director job. Somebody was searching for a director on LinkedIn, found my profile, called me, talked to me, hooked me up. Same goes for techs, but it's another form of networking. Find my LinkedIn article and it'll tell you how to make a perfect profile. But cross training. So I think it went through. I posted the link for the cross training article. This is something you can give to your boss if you have that kind of relationship, to help them understand why it makes more sense to cross train from inside instead of hiring somebody from outside. And here's just a brief overview on the table of contents. Let's see. What are the benefits of cross-training employees? It increases morale. The staff already know each other. It's cheaper in the long run. Employee already knows your EMR, your policies, your procedures. It rewards staff for loyalty and hard work. It opens up a new job wherever that tech came from. If you're cross-training X-ray to MRI, now you've opened up an X-ray spot for your PRN to move into or whatever. And the cons of cross-training are there's a cost. So when I cross-trained a CT tech into MRI, I calculated that because I paid during my cross-training, because you can't not pay. So I paid the CT tech their normal wages for 3 months. MRI is a 3-month training process in my book. So they made about $25,000 or whatever in those 3 months. And then I had to pay somebody to backfill them in CT, because I'm not just going to tell my team, you're on your own for 3 months without George. So I had to backfill, and that was another 25. So I paid about $50,000 to cross train somebody. So there's the cost of cross training. And then another con to cross training is that person's got less experience out of the box. You got to start from scratch versus you hire somebody from outside that's been doing it for 20 years. You get somebody that already knows how to do MRI. And the let's see, cons of cross training, less experience, and let's see, is it better to hire an outside candidate? The pros of hiring from outside is they already have the modality experience. They can hit the ground running, and it brings a new energy to the department, which can be a good thing. Somebody with new eyes, fresh eyes. I like that in the sense that they can say, well, why are you doing a 7-sequence shoulder? Where I came from, we did 5. And I'd say, well, give me that protocol. And then I'd take that to the radiology group. And I'd say, would you guys be okay with a 5-sequence shoulder? And they'd be like, sure. Just shaved 2 sequences off of a shoulder. Now, if you have a good plugged in supervisor or manager, they should already be looking at that stuff. But I don't hire from outside. I think I've done it once or twice because there was a lack of applicants. But the cost of external hiring is they don't know anything about your hospital. They don't know where anything is. They got to learn where all the rooms are, the floors, everything. They don't know your computer system. So they don't know if you're on Cerner or Epic or whatever. If they're not used to that, they got to learn how to open recs and close recs and all that stuff. They have to earn the respect of the staff. Where if you cross-train somebody everybody knows, everybody already gets along. You bring somebody from the outside, you got some leery eyes that you have to prove your worth to me, kind of a thing. It creates a low morale among employees because why didn't he cross-train one of us who's been here for a while working our butts off? Why did he pull somebody from outside? So you create a lower morale among the employees, and you risk that new employee not fitting in. And so you give them 90 days, usually 120 if you got to extend it. If you find out they don't know what they said they know, I've had that happen, and you got to let them go, and they got to start all over again. Or if they just don't get in, or you ever work with those people that say, well, where I used to work, we blah, blah, blah. Nobody likes that. So there's always the chance you got to let them go. So I think smart administration will always use multimodality techs, and they will promote it from within. Are they going to do it because of CMS? No, because if you look back, CMS is always trying to cut reimbursement. The government's always trying to cut reimbursement. Insurance companies are always trying to cut reimbursement. And so, I encourage people to learn more modalities to make yourself more marketable. But the flip side of that coin is you're going to be expected to do more. Now, hopefully you're getting paid the higher modality. So if you're an X-ray and you learn MRI, you're probably going to be doing MRI all the time. But let's say the MRI goes down for a couple of days for a horrible reason. That'd be horrible. But if it goes down and you want hours, they could put you over an X-ray for a couple of days till MRI gets fixed. If you're not a multimodality tech, you're done. You're out. So I hope that answers your question. Sapphire, do MRI techs or CT techs, enjoy their jobs? Yeah. I mean, I've seen burnouts. I've had to have some talks with some techs and let some techs go that were just burned out and didn't care and weren't following protocol. And had a tech once that grabbed the wrong patient, did a contrast study, and then tried to blame it on the nurse. And so, well, the nurse, when I asked the nurse if that's the right patient, they said yes. So then it's the nurse's fault. But yet this tech scanned them without checking any ID. And then when they figured it out, they deleted the study into the digital trash can. So they were trying to hide it. So that person lost their job. So for the most part, yeah, we don't do this stuff because we don't like doing it. We do it because we like it. We like to pay. We like to solve. My thing is solving problems, solving riddles. What's wrong with that patient? Can I solve that problem? You could end up working somewhere where you like what you do, but you can't stand the administration. And so you have to figure out how to balance that. If you got a negative boss, but you like what you do, you got to figure out how to deal with that. I've got an article on how to deal with abusive patients, because that's a part of our job. You get a drunk ED patient that's spitting at you or swinging at you or cussing at you. I say in the article, when I was in the ED, if somebody cussed at me or spit at me or said, I'm going to punch you in the face, I'd say,
Bye-bye. And I'd go tell the ER doc, I refuse to scan that person. They just threatened me. Let me know if you want to sedate them or something, but I refuse to scan that patient. They threatened me. They spit at me. They took a swing at me. We get to say who we scan if they put us in jeopardy. And don't forget that. You don't have to scan somebody that's spitting at you or swinging at you or threatening you or whatever. You go to that ordering physician or your boss and you say, I do not feel comfortable scanning that person. Maybe somebody else does. Or if you want to do it, I'll go with you, but I'm not going to scan that patient by myself. Um, where are we at? Gosh, you guys are really lighting up. We're at 2 hours. Um, like if I get my degree, can I start a school and do clinical training? I think there's a lot more involved to that than you think. There's a lot of red tape to starting a school. That's a big, big deal. You could become an x-ray tech and be a clinical instructor at the hospital. Um, there are some people that like doing that, some that don't. Some people are forced to do it and they don't want to do it. Um, so if you're an x-ray tech and you have some experience under your belt, you can be the clinical instructor at the clinical site. So there's a couple things. Maybe you're not in school yet. So um, at the school, there are teachers that teach you the classroom stuff. And then there's a clinical instructor who drives around to all the hospitals where all the students are at and goes in and checks on them. That's a clinical instructor. But then there's also techs working in the hospital, and the boss says, "Hey, Bob, you're in charge of the students for the next semester. You make sure they're assigned to certain departments. You make sure all their paperwork's done right, and you make sure they don't turn any crap films in." And that person becomes a clinical instructor, and you may get $1 an hour for doing it, increase. You may not get anything, and now you got extra work for nothing. And the people that like to work with students do that, regardless of pay. But the people that don't want to do it look at it like, now I'm on the hook. If we're slammed and this student runs out and shoots a film and doesn't run it by me and it makes it to the radiologist and it's bad, the radiologist calls me, how can you let this film go through? Now you're in trouble for what the student did, and you didn't even want this job in the first place, right? I've heard that. So if you really just want to work with the students, there's a lot of different things you can do. You can teach in the X-ray program if you have the appropriate degree, or you can teach on the job as a tech teaching the students. And you don't even have to be the clinical instructor. If you got 20 X-ray techs on the floor and 2 students, sometimes that clinical instructor is coordinating things, but it's all the other techs that the student gets paired up with. Very rarely do you get the same person every day for a semester. It's usually today, Tom's in ER. Why don't you hang out with Tom today? Today, Sally's up in the OR. Why don't you hang out with Sally today? And students get a big mixture of everything that's going on. So starting a school is a big thing. So Deborah, in my area, they don't have a lot of schools. Yeah, no, I get it. Where I'm at, Southern Idaho, we got one, and I think we would benefit from having another one, but it's just not that easy. I mean, you think about the building, the school, the rent you got to pay on the school, the loan you have to secure to get that building, and then you have to, from what I recall, because I kind of looked into it, you basically have to hire all the staff, build your program, get your students into the program, but you've got to explain to those students that you are not accredited yet. And your goal is to get accredited before those students graduate so that when they graduate, they can sit for the board exams. And then while you're taking that first class of students through each semester, you're reporting to JCERT or whoever your accreditation body is, and they're checking on it. And every now and then they even come do site visits on you and check things. And if you do everything you're supposed to do, then they certify you before the end of that graduating class and you're good to go. And then they still check on you every now and then over the years. It's not one and done. You're constantly surveyed. So, you got to have the funds to do all. You got to have the equipment because you really need to have extra equipment at the school that the kids can practice on. You got to set up contracts with all the hospitals to do clinical rotations at them. It's pretty big deal. So there you go. You're welcome. Detective Awesome. Don't forget too, Deb. There's a lot of online school stuff popping up. if you can get a local hospital to allow you to do your clinical rotations there, but go to school online through like Weber State or somebody, then you don't have to have a local school. I've done that in the past couple of years. I did a nuke med tech that way and an ultrasound tech that way. They were my techs, x-ray or whatever. They got into the school program online, did their clinical rotations when they weren't doing a shift. So let's say they worked Friday, Saturday, Sunday for me. They did their clinicals Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. That was their clinical rotation. The school was online and they graduated, sit for the boards, and you can do that. So don't forget about that option. Weber State's kind of my go-to for that kind of stuff, and PIMA. I heard about the vascular sonography cert from ART. Are X-ray techs able to cross-train, or would that be a long stretch? I just want to keep options. Yeah, so I've been writing a lot about this, and actually I called ART yesterday, and I said, you guys have started a firestorm with this email you sent out, because if you go look on the ultrasound forums on Facebook, they're all pissed. What are they doing trying to let people get ultrasound licenses? They don't have to go through all the school we had to go through. This is absurd. And that's not what they're saying at all. And then the x-ray people are all confused. Well, how am I supposed to get scanning time in ultrasound when I work in x-ray? So here's the thing, and I'm still researching it. And what the ART told me was they wouldn't let me interview them because I wanted to do a video interview asking questions and then post it for you guys so you can see it straight from them. They wouldn't do that. And then they wouldn't let me do an audio recording. So they said, look, just gather up all the questions that you have from everybody and give them to us and we'll answer them all and send them back to you. And I'm like, okay, if that's the best I can get, that's good enough. So that's actually posted in all 4 of the groups that I recommend on Facebook. I have posted that statement that if you have a question about this, post it in there, and I'm going to gather all those up and take them to the ART probably Monday. But from what I can tell, the ART is offering a certification exam for vascular sonography. They've always done vascular intervention. That's the cath lab side of vascular. This is the ultrasound side of vascular, if that makes sense. So they've got this test for vascular sonography, but they've got a part of it that's never been done before. The patient care aspect of the questions have never been given. I don't know that they've ever given the vascular sonography. I think the whole thing might be a brand new test. That's one of the things I'm trying to figure out. But on their page that talks about it, they tell you that the patient care part's brand new, and they're going to take 2 months to tell you whether you passed it or not. And that's why they're giving it to you for free, because you have to wait to find out if you passed. But they're also giving it to you for free because they don't know how they're going to score that patient care side. They're going to take everybody's tests that are taken and look at all the answers given and use that to kind of figure out, was this question just too ridiculously hard? We should throw it out. Was this question too easy? Everybody got it right. And they're going to figure out how they're going to grade those questions based on what everybody said. And then they're going to figure out how to grade the whole test. And then they're going to notify people you passed or you didn't pass. And you're getting it free because you're the guinea pigs for that process. Now I'm still trying to find out all the details. So where does that benefit a tech? You still have to do the competencies, just like we've been talking about. So let's say in vascular, you do carotids, you do arteriovenous arms, arteriovenous legs, renal Doppler, some liver arterials. Let's say there's 10 different vascular exams you do. The requirements to sit for the exam are just like an x-ray. You have to do 10 of each of those. And you have to have a doctor or somebody that can certify that, yes, I've seen them do them. You can never just show up and take a test. You have to prove that you've been doing those exams and you do them. You've done them enough times to sit for the exam. So I haven't seen that paperwork for vascular, but let's just say they want a document that says I've done 10 carotids, 10 arterials, 10 venous, 10 renals, 10 whatever, and a radiologist or a doctor or someone else with that same credential has signed off. And that's another good question. Because if you're taking the MRI boards, an MRI tech has to sign, a licensed MRI tech has to sign you off. An ultrasound tech can't sign off your MRI competencies. So do you have to have a vascular sonographer sign you off, or any sonographer, or a physician always trumps all of it. So if you can get a rad to sign you off. So trying to finish that up for you. So where does it, so it would benefit me as a sonographer because I don't have the vascular license. and I do vascular exams. So I can get the documentation. And so this sounds really great to me because I don't have to pay the $200 and I've got everything that meets the criteria. But an x-ray tech, you're not going to have ultrasound exams done. You're going to have to figure out how to go get those done. So what you could do is you could approach your boss and say, look, boss, I do x-rays for you, but I really like ultrasound. And there's this opportunity to sit for a vascular certification for free, but I got to get some competencies, and you need to pull that paperwork down and be able to show it to them and say, look, if I can shadow, and then maybe you let me get some hands-on for a couple of months because this test isn't until May, I think. There's a window in May where you can take it. If your boss agrees that you would be beneficial to be a trained vascular tech, you see there's the other kind of slippery slope. The gold standard for ultrasound, I don't want to get too complicated here, but the gold standard for ultrasound is the ARDMS. That's the ART for ultrasound, the ARDMS or the RDMS. And they are who certifies ultrasound techs. And then I can't remember when, maybe 10 years ago, I don't remember when, maybe 15 years ago, probably about 15 years ago, the ART decided, well, we could give tests for ultrasound too. And they started offering an ultrasound certification, and you could put an S behind your name if you passed it. If you took the ARDMS, which was the gold standard for a long time and the only way to get licensed, you had to pass 2 exams to be considered a sonographer. You had to pass a physics exam, which was its own separate exam, and then you had to pass a specialty, OB, breast, abdomen, vascular, whatever. You had to pass 2 certification exams to be a sonographer. And then ART came out and said, oh, we just have one. We can just take one. So when I was in ultrasound school in like 2008, my teacher at Gateway Community College said, because the ARDMS tests are hard. He said, look, if you can't get past it, go take that one the ART's offering, because technically you can still call yourself licensed. If you get the ART's S certificate, you're still a licensed ultrasound person. You're just not ARDMS licensed. Now, most hospitals require the ARDMS. That's the catch, because that's all there was forever. Now some of them are starting to say, we'll take both. And then there's a CCI, there's something else, but they're starting to loosen up a little bit. But they're still, I know radiology directors that say, absolutely not, I won't accept that. I only will take the ARDMS because, by God, that's what it's always been and that's what it'll always be, which is crap. Honestly, you got to be able, use your brain. If the ART can provide a quality exam, let's say I'm not licensed and I'm learning ultrasounds. I'm doing the ultrasounds and I learn what I learn. And let's say my buddy Joe does the same thing, learns the same thing. He goes and takes the ART cert, and I go and take the RDMS cert, and we both pass. Is one of us really better than the other? We learn from the same people. We did the same amount of study, the same amount of everything. No, that doesn't make one person any better. But that's kind of the perception out there, is if you're ARDMS, you're top of the line. Man, that depends on your education. So how do I get up on this? So that's what you'd have to do from the x-ray side. That's why the ART people in the forums are like, how does this benefit us? It only benefits you if you can go get the competencies done. It benefits which is weird because they emailed it out to the ART people, right? Well, they had to. They don't have the database for the ultrasound people from the ARDMS, a different group. So they just kind of shoved it out because they need people to take it so they can solidify how to grade this thing and get it going. So that's what it is. If you can find somebody to let you do the clinical aspect, you can go take tests for free and get certified. And because ART doesn't require 2 tests to get certified, you're done. But like me, where I could turn in all the paperwork, then I would just have that one particular certificate. It's weird. I know. If you have questions, go out into the forum group so I can give them all to the ART and they can answer them officially. You said disappointed when they took ultrasound from the post-primary route. So tell me why you're disappointed with that. I would almost agree, because I had to do it the hard way, because it was post-primary. It wasn't primary. I had to go to x-ray school first to get into ultrasound school first. So when they made it primary, I'm like, that's not fair. But really good for those people that don't have to be X-ray techs first for no reason. So I get it. If you want to chime in on that, go ahead. By the way, fellow MRI techs, I highly recommend MRI Master for your MRI positioning and protocol reference. Well, there you go. So you guys that want to study MRI, he's telling you what a good source is. And if you plug an MRI on my search bar, I've got something very similar. Let's just do that and see what we get. Because I believe what I did was I took information out of a Facebook group. Somebody asked that question, what do I study for MRI? And everybody chimed in. And so I took that information and made a post out of it. So here it is. I open that up. It goes over how many questions are in the exam, what are the pilot questions, what happens once you answer all the questions, what if you aren't able to answer the questions, what do they include in the study modules, how long does it take to take the study modules, what are the key subjects, and I list a bunch of different books. If he says that's a good one to go with, go with it. I'm not licensed in MRI, so I never played that one. What else? Rad Tech student here, finishing up on my first semester. Do you currently have students doing clinicals at your hospital? Hospitals in my area letting nursing students. So I monitor that across the country. So I had this cool aspect of my job where I was a delegate for my entire hospital system to the group purchasing organization. So in other words, hospitals that are big enough can buy into kind of a Costco membership or a Sam's Club membership of where they buy their equipment and their supplies. And so there was one called Health Trust that is kind of like a Costco for hospitals. And I was the radiology delegate. So on behalf of our whole system, 4 times a year, I would go to the Health Trust headquarters in Nashville, Tennessee, and spend 2, 3, 4 days, sun up to sundown, reviewing contracts and getting pitched from different vendors about new things and discussing that kind of stuff. So I got to see and connect with directors from all over the country. So I've got a great, there's another shout out to LinkedIn. You can connect with people all over the country and build a great network. So I know some facilities are saying no to students, and some facilities are. The one here locally is. There was a time they sent them home. I know students in my Facebook group that are not able to go in. I met one girl, really felt bad for her, who was in Wyoming. For her clinicals, they stuck her at the same outpatient imaging center for her entire rotation, her entire schooling, 2 years. She was at one office. It had one of everything except nuke med. But what kind of experience is that? Are you going to be able to learn everything you need to learn? I think you should go to a level 1 trauma and an outpatient imaging center, maybe an ortho doc clinic or a doc in the box somewhere, private practice, something. You got to get some different experience. And this poor girl, and she never passed her boards. She had taken them twice and can't get past them. And I think that part of that is because she just wasn't done right by the school. So, yeah, if you're, I talk about that a little bit. So if you're stuck at home, you're not allowed to go to your clinicals. What do? You start watching all the YouTube videos you can find on positioning. Look up X-Ray Ray. He's got a great channel. I think he just finished his first year. He does some videos on how to, this is how you do a shoulder X-ray and that kind of thing. Study your books. Go get that Mr. Bones, Bonez, the skeleton on Amazon. I probably have it on my site somewhere. But it's a full-size skeleton that stays in the position you put him in. And yeah, free. So here's where I gave one away. Copy link. Somebody was telling me earlier I needed to have another giveaway. So here's one that I did. Go to that link and look at Mr. Bones. He's like $50. You can. He's actually pretty anatomically correct too, but you can position him and practice on him. The only thing you can't really duplicate is the x-ray machine, obviously. So if you're stuck at home, you just got to watch the videos, and if you have a friend over to practice on your kids, your spouse. I feel really bad for you guys that can't go to clinical sites, because that's like they're telling you how to learn how to do a job without being able to go to the job. So, who do you owe your allegiance to? Well, that's a good question. I don't really have an answer to that. You're beholden to whoever you have a license to, because they can take it away. And if that happens, you went to school for nothing. And so I'll tell you a dirty little secret I learned a long time ago. My good friend Scott Berry. Scott Berry, I was an x-ray tech, and Scott Berry was a security guard at the hospital. And he came to me and he's like, I think I like what you're doing. I think I like this x-ray thing. I think I might want to go to school for it. And I said, well, aren't you a cop? He said, yeah, I'm a full-time officer. I just do this thing on the side. And I said, well, why? Are you tired of getting shot at? What's the deal? And he goes, no. He said, I believe every person should have two means of supporting themselves. And he said, what if something happens to me on the job or whatever, and I can't be a cop anymore? What am I going to do? He said, I can't survive on security guard wages. And I said, no, I get it. I said, I've got X-ray training and ultrasound training. So if one falls through, I can always do the other. He goes, no, you don't understand. You're under the healthcare umbrella. So if healthcare ever falls apart, you're screwed, because that's all you know. And I for the longest time, because that was 20 years ago, the longest time I was like, whatever, I know what I'm doing. And here we are in a pandemic, and people are losing their jobs. And if you can't work at a local hospital because they just flat out freeze hiring and aren't hiring anybody, if you're an x-ray and ultrasound, it doesn't matter. So I have gone out to get something secondary that's completely outside of healthcare. I'm actually just starting to get into it. It's if I'm being transparent, it's real estate. I sat for the board exams and passed the board exams, and I'm getting into the real estate business on the side, because nothing is foolproof. Nothing. I've seen these hospitals. I have made a hospital $10 million out of one modality. And that hospital, the administrators, will still tell me, you need to thin out your employees. You need to lose some. You need to demote some supervisors. You got too many supervisors. And I made them $90 million in 1 year with all my modalities. But yet they're pinching me to, no, you have too many tech threes, because I'll turn in paperwork. I want these 3 people to be promoted to tech 3. They're awesome. No, that your ratio is too high. You need 1 tech 3 to 10 tech 1s or whatever. I'm like, ratio? This is a career ladder. If they qualify, they qualify. No, because that'll cost us more money. And so I just got really disappointed over the years. And that's the warning you get when you get into management. The guy that got me, Charlie Porter, got me into management back at Flagstaff Medical Center. Charlie Porter interviewed me for an ultrasound job. And by the time he came back around, how hospitals are, he came back around like 4 months later and offered the job. I'm like, dude, I already took another job, but it's not my ideal job. So what do you have? And he said, well, I got a second shift. I said, what happened to the day shift? He said, that one already got taken. He said, I got a second shift, 2 to 10. You want it? And I said, I'd love to, but I'm not going to sacrifice my family time. I'll stick with this mediocre job. And I advise you to do that every time. Don't second guess yourself and don't give up your family time or your personal time. And what happened because of that, I said, I'm sorry, man, I'd really love to come work for you. And I know it's beautiful up there in Flagstaff, but I'm not going to give up my family time. And he said, well, have you ever thought about management? I'm And I kind of laughed because I'm like, yeah, dude, that's why I keep going back to school. I'm, working on my master's now and blah, blah, blah. And so he hired me as a manager. But in my interview, he said, are you sure you're ready to get into management? Because it's not the same thing. And I'm thinking, what? I don't have to take call anymore. I don't have to work weekends anymore. I might make a little bit, believe it or not, you make a little bit less money in management as you do as a tech, because as a tech, you have all those opportunities to make extra money. Management, they expect that's what I learned over the years. They still expect you to be on call at night and weekends, and you get calls all hours of the night. And you have to go down there and solve problems, but you don't get any extra pay for it. And so, so I've got some articles about that kind of stuff, but I caution anybody who, if you enjoy being a tech, see, my philosophy was, if I can affect one life at a time as a tech, I can affect multiple lives at a time if I'm in management. I can affect the whole community. I can get better care to the whole community. Well, that's only if your bosses have a brain. I tried to start a local mammography, a mobile mammo unit, an RV that would drive around and do mammograms in the rural locations where people maybe can't drive into town. And that stupid RV's been sitting there for about 3 years at the hospital because I can't get administration behind it. So I recommend you stay a tech and become the best tech you can be, and be true to your team and support your team, and have fun as a team of technologists. Making sure I'm not missing anything since I've been on here 2.5 hours. I went on a tangent there. Where am I at? No. I think we're out of questions. So I think I may call it good there. I said I was going to go to lunch like an hour ago. I hope this has been helpful. I enjoy sharing knowledge and experience. At some point, we'll talk about the fun stuff, like comp shopping. You students should be comp shopping. Hey, Liam, when I was a tech and I'd have a student, I'd pull a tech, and I did this with Scott Berry. I'd say, what are you missing on your competency list? Let's go do some comp shopping. He's like, I need a mandible. So we'd go down to the ER and I'd be like, hey, doc, my buddy Scott here needs a mandible. And he's like, well, the guy in 7 got in a fight. And I said, well, did you get punched in the face? And he goes, yeah. And I go, well, you should probably evaluate his mandible then, don't you think? And if it was necessary, then the doc would be like, yeah, that's a good idea. And boom, we'd get him a mandible. So we would do that as often as we could, because you don't get that stuff all the time. You don't get SI joints and all that stuff. So there's a lot of ways to have fun in this career. Wheelchair races, portable races. You ever ridden on top of a portable backwards and you used a little go bar to race with? Syringes make great darts. Lots of fun stuff. But Darnell, no worries, brother. If I really needed to be somewhere, I think I got 3 kids home right now. They'd be in here beating down the door. So, Liam, did you have any questions, or are you just saying, hey, that's cool either way? Obviously, I don't mind talking about this stuff, but if you don't have any more questions, my whole purpose today, or one of my purposes today, was to make sure this internet connection stayed up. My local internet provider is watching the bandwidth. I had problems the other day when I did this. It kept disconnecting. So we're at about 2.5 hours. That's a pretty good amount of bandwidth. And I appreciate all the thumbs up. I appreciate all the questions. You now know about the blog where I post everything. You know about this YouTube channel where there's, 70 videos at this point or something like that. If you have any other questions, add them on here. It sends me an email if somebody asks me a question on YouTube. And Saturday is one of my kids' birthdays, so I probably won't do one of these on Saturday, but I'm thinking about doing one of these every Saturday. Maybe a Sunday night or maybe a Saturday morning or something like that. We'll see if we get these bugs worked out with, having strong internet connection in BFE, Idaho is a task all on its own. But guys, you have a great weekend. Stay safe. Wear your PPE. Watch out for the vid monster. And talk to you later.